Morning po.
Okay po.
Good morning,
Good,
everyone.
ayun. Good morning, everyone. You have 35 minutes for the presentation and after that, Q&A. Ha?
Okay po.
Okay, sige. Good luck.
So, good morning everyone. We are here to present our research paper titled The Corporate Social Responsibility in the Performance of Selected Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises in Metro Manila, Philippines. To start, let's discuss the chapter 1. Next slide. So, for introduction, corporate social responsibility is a managerial theory that deals with integrating social and environmental issues in the businesses of companies. At present, the relevance of CSR has increased exponentially, representing a business strategy that benefits their companies as well as their target beneficiaries. But one of the most pressing matters about CSR is how it impacts the company's performance. According to the study conducted by Mongolia Ho, the companies who participate in CSR programs generate a favorable image of the firm and create a chance to grow their brand, which results in consumer satisfaction, loyalty, and a rise in organization's profitability. However, according to Uriham, the application of CSR concepts may result in additional expenses for businesses, resulting in a reduction in profit. Entrepreneurs are increasing in numbers and they continue to strive to build businesses to generate desirable income rates, leaving behind the concept of CSR. That's why every business, whether small or big, should have a role not just for the enhancement and convenience of the lives of people, but also a role to have a good ethics and practices to its community and environment. Performance and CSR should come hand in hand in every business approach. So, in this study, the researchers aim to examine CSR programs of the selected SMEs in Metro Manila using the Carroll model of CSR components and determine its relationship to their performance and provide recommendations for further research. Next slide. So this study aims to answer the following questions. Number one, how do selected SMEs in Metro Manila, Philippines rate their performance of CSR programs based on the following components: economic, legal, ethical, and discretionary social responsibility. Number two, how do CSR programs benefit SMEs in Metro Manila? And last, is there a significant relationship between CSR and the performance of selected SMEs in Metro Manila? Next slide. With this, the null hypothesis of the study is that there is no significant relationship between CSR and the performance of selected SMEs in Metro Manila. So for the scope and delimitation, the study focuses on selected SMEs in Metro Manila that are chosen based on their availability and accessibility to the researchers, given that some of them are unavailable, possibly limiting the number of respondents. Furthermore, the analysis of this study concentrates on Carroll models for components of CSR, as well as its relationship to the performance of the sampled SMEs in 2021. And due to the limited access to information caused by the pandemic, the researchers are unable to undertake a detailed examination of these variables. Next slide. The results of the study are significant to the future researchers because the gathered information could be used to address theoretical issues or fill a gap in the research literature. Furthermore, this will serve as a foundation for business organizations to implement CSR programs and measure the impact on their performance. And for educational institutions, this study will serve as a reference for educators in their teachings about CSR and its relationship to the performance of SMEs. And lastly, this will inform the community of Metro Manila as to whether various SMEs in their areas are socially responsible or only concerned with their financial success. So for the definition of terms, the following are the terminologies used in the study. So to discuss the chapter 2, let's call on Mr. Valejos.
Now let's discuss our second chapter, which is the review of related literature. We have four parts, and the first part is about SMEs. According to the Asian Development Bank and World Bank, SMEs are backbone of Asian economies. They are able to generate income and provide employment opportunities. In fact, 90% of the enterprises and more than half of all jobs in the globe are made from SMEs, according to Mahembe. In the Philippines, Metro Manila, there are about 200,000 SMEs. Though they are really plenty in numbers, they still face a lot of challenges, especially in developing countries like the Philippines. These are lack of infrastructures, funding issues, and the most relevant issue now, which is COVID-19. On the survey that the International Trade Center has conducted, 99% of the enterprises as respondents said that they were affected of the pandemic, while 9% of the 99 was about to close. Now, SMEs are faced with different demands from the society from not just becoming a backbone of it, but also to become a part of sustainable development at the same time. Next part, let's talk about CSR and its component. On the first part of our report, we have defined already what is CSR. But what does CSR compose of? Pasqua have shared four components of CSR, which are philanthropic, ethical, legal, and economic. She shares the same thought to the famous Carroll model of CSR, which composed of the following. Number one, economic, which focuses on being profitable. Example of ECSR are transparent financial statements visible to all users and savings and cost reduction programs that increases profit and maximizes shareholders' interest. Number two, legal. This is the minimum requirement of CSR according to Seniori's. Examples are adhering to labor laws, strict rules and regulations inside the firm, as well as paying taxes. Third is ethical. This deals with workplace ethics and environmental conservation programs of a company. Fourth and last is discretionary. This one is defined as which is desired but not required by the company. More on voluntary activities in the community where they belong, like willful public donations and charities. But how CSR helps SMEs? Let's move to the third part. The following are the summary. Number one, it increases customer relationship. According to the Manila Times 2018, majority of consumers more likely to patronize a company whose products and services are prepared in line with established procedures that contribute to long-term development and provide economic, social, and environmental advantages to all. Number two, it improves financial performance according to Cook, Abner, and Ferrer from their different articles and studies. Economic CSR reduces operating costs and helps improve financial performance of the company. When resources are utilized appropriately, the financial performance of the business can be enhanced. Third, is it establishes good relationship with law regulators. Cook explained that in essence, CSR policy may provide an edge when bidding for government contracts. Good relationships with the regulators would help to facilitate their dealings with government department officers, and if the activities manage to win the heart of the communities, this would contribute to increased level of public engagement and of course less conflict. Fourth is that there will be a better work from employees. Cook, Gutierrez, Nicolas, Amparado, and Galbraith speak for the same thought about employee satisfaction. By making employees aware of the company's initiatives, To give back and recognizing these efforts, a company may help employees become more actively involved with their job and produce better work overall. Fifth, is that it creates good brand reputation and public image. Nicolas and Anaparado stated that when there's CSR promoting good cause, it provides streams of a competitive advantages from improving its image as a respected member of the society. Sixth and last, by engaging in certain CSR activities, companies may reduce their impact on the environment and thus reduce the risk of future environmental costs. That is an intangible long term benefit. Other intangible benefits may include brand value, reputation, confidence, and innovativeness. Also, CSR has positive impact on revenues because of the tax write-offs and risk mitigation incentives. But despite of all these advantages, there are still challenges or why some SMEs don't really push for having a CSR programs. So let's go there. These are the challenges in implementing CSR programs. Number one is that it falls disproportionately on small businesses. Thompson, Kelmas, Hakim, and Mustafa believes that CSR are for large companies only. Large companies can allocate high costs in adopting CSR, which small and medium enterprises cannot always do. Also, according to Udayan Sakar, employees in SMEs are less motivated to engage in CSR activities. Next challenge. Next is Bueno, who listed two reasons why business adopt CSR. And one of this is to just disguise an unethical activities. Some companies clothe their bad habits through the form of implementing CSR, just like the tobacco companies, which appear to be helping to reduce the impact of COVID-19, where in fact, they continue to produce and promote sell harmful products that lead to severe COVID-19 effects and deaths. Third is complexity. Bourbon explained that the activities can be too complex, which pose a great challenge for companies and thus significantly hinder their implementation. That is why it should be noted that CSR programs require careful planning and strategic approach. Last is the need for sufficient knowledge and management skills. Bourbon, in her study that is concerned in hotels of Calabarzon, she discovered that CSR performance measurement like supply usage, the well-being of clients, and secretions are a huge challenge for hotels, in which if improperly planned and implemented, can negatively affect the community instead of helping. So these are just some of the many reasons why some SMEs don't push for having a CSR programs. For the next part of our chapter 2, let's call on Angeline Velasco.
Next slide, please. The related literature and studies are relevant in this study to serve as a basis for the discussion of the concepts of the research problem and to support the findings of the study. SMEs face a number of societal challenges, including social and environmental requirements, as well as financial restrictions, limited capacity, weak structures, budgetary restraints, and institutional flaws, all of which risk their business environment. As a result, corporate social responsibility and its four components require companies, including SMEs, to take a broader view of their responsibilities to their stakeholders. Apart from the financial advantage of CSR initiatives, companies who adhere to the CSR standards benefit more than those who do not, boosting their image, building customer connections, and recognizing a bright future for both the company and the people and communities they serve. Next, the theoretical framework of this study includes the social capital theory of Pierre Bourdieu, which, according to Macalek and Martin, considers the social relationships as assets of an entity that could contribute to human capital accumulation and development. This aids the SMEs in understanding their CSR approach according to Russo and Perini. Another theory, which is the agency theory by Jensen and Meckling, provides a basis for analyzing the relationship between performance for SME proprietors, and the implementation of CSR, which claims that gaps between the interests of managers and shareholders exist. Archie Carroll's pyramid of corporate social responsibility became the foundation of other concepts in the 1990s, which inspired John Elkington's triple bottom theory. Carroll's pyramid of CSR represents the business responsibilities that the society expects from companies, having the economic aspect as the foundation of all the other responsibilities. The triple bottom line theory aids in the understanding of the relationship between CSR and the business performance, considering financials and the focus on solving both environmental and social concerns of the company. These theories were utilized to develop and support the study in the analysis of the relationship between CSR and the performance of selected SMEs in Metro Manila. Next. The conceptual framework of the study, as presented, includes the components of CSR as the input, which are the economic, legal, ethical, and discretionary social responsibility. The study is considered as descriptive quantitative research, by which the process includes a selection of the respondents through simple random sampling method based on the availability of the said respondents and accessibility to the researchers during the study's administration. The use of a survey questionnaire was also utilized in this study, presented to the company management and other stakeholders, the sample size of which is identified using the Slovis formula, rating the components of the CSR to arrive at a numerical equivalent value for the assessment of the relationship between CSR and the performance of selected SMEs. The response of the survey is calculated applying the percentage statistical treatment, while the assessment of the components of CSR with regards to their degree of importance use the ranking statistical treatment. To arrive at the determination of the output of the study, the Pearson correlation coefficient was used. The output of this study is the assessment of the benefit of CSR programs to the SMEs and the determination on whether or not there is a significant relationship between CSR and the performance of selected SMEs in Metro Manila. As for the third chapter, which is the research methodology, may I present Ms. Karen Morente.
Next slide, please. So for the research locale, this study focuses only on the SMEs present in Metro Manila, Philippines. It will come from the 16 cities and one municipality listed. For the type of sources or For the type or sources of data, the data for this study was gathered from primary and secondary sources. The primary data were collected from the responses of the 100 respondents of the survey questionnaire, while related literature and studies found online were used as secondary data for the study. Next slide. So in terms of application, this research applies a pure or basic research design with a goal of deeper understanding of a certain phenomenon. In terms of objectives, this study uses the descriptive research method, which seeks to better comprehend and describe the relationship of one variable to another, specifically the CSR in the performance of selected SMEs in Metro Manila. So under the descriptive type of research, this study employed a cross-sectional survey which analyzes data from a sample population of variables collected at a single point in time. And in terms of the type of information sought, quantitative research is used which collects numerical information and interprets it using mathematically based methods. Next is population and samples, or the sampling technique. According to the 2020 census of the Philippine Statistics Authority, or the PSA, there are 33,738 SMEs present in Metro Manila. From this population, a sample size of 100 has been derived using Slovin's formula. So due to limitations brought by pandemic, a 10% margin of error was used, resulting in 90% confidence level. And the researchers used a simple random sampling method of selecting the 100 samples from the population. Next slide. So the researchers used the questionnaire-based survey as the main instrument in collecting the data needed. This was prepared by the researchers to provide questions that will answer the problem of the study. And to validate the instrument, the researchers consulted with the research advisor in finalizing the instrument. So the contents of the survey questionnaire is divided into 8 major parts, which are presented on the screen. Next slide. So, in pre-stages, after the survey questionnaire was constructed and validated, the researchers identified the list of the SMEs or the respondents and obtain the necessary formal permissions from the university and the selected SMEs where the data will be collected. So during the data gathering, the questionnaire-based survey, which was floated through Google Forms, was distributed by the researchers to 494 SMEs through the company emails and Facebook-based business pages of the respondents. The researchers allotted 3 weeks to gather and synthesize all the data needed. Of 494 SMEs, the researchers received 100 valid responses, which is also the required sample size computed using the Slovis formula. So the data were extracted from Google Forms, analyzed, and interpreted by the researchers in the post stages of data gathering. Next slide. So the collected data are subjected to the following statistical treatment. First is the Sloven's formula, which is used to determine the proper sample size from a population. Next is percentage. This is used to calculate the response frequency, and most of the data in the survey questionnaire are presented using this method. Next is ranking. This was applied in the four components of CSR to determine their degree of importance to companies. And lastly, person's correlation coefficient. This is a task statistic that measures the strength and direction of a statistical relationship or association between two variables. The part 3 of the survey questionnaire, which is the CSR programs, and part 7, which is the benefits of performing CSR programs, are used to analyze the relationship between CSR and the performance of selected SMEs in Metro Manila. So to discuss the chapter 4, here is Ms. Almaria.
So for this chapter, next slide po. First, the company profile. Here it indicates the number of respondents for each city of the selected SMEs in Metro Manila with CSR programs. So as you can see, most of the respondents are from Quezon City, with only 4% each from Mandaluyong City and Municipality of Pateros. Next slide. For the CSR descriptions profile, according to the survey, 100% of the sampled SMEs admitted that their company engages in CSR programs. In fact, 78% or the majority have been doing this for more than 3 years. With regards to the overall ranking of the four CSR components, the respondents rank economic as the most important or rank 1, second is legal, third is ethical, and discretionary as the least important or rank 4 based on the respondents. Next slide. For the CSR programs, respondents are presented by 3 programs for each 4 components and instructed to rate it in a scale of 0 to 5 based on how well their company performs with it. So according to the results obtained, in terms of economic, legal, and ethical social responsibility, the majority of the respondents rated theirs as 5, while in terms of discretionary, nearly half of the respondents rated theirs as 5, indicating that they are doing well with their CSR programs. For the CSR processes, next slide please. Here it shows the different processes in CSR, the dissemination, selection, implementation, and monitoring. In terms of CSR dissemination, the majority of the respondents, or 77%, communicate their CSR programs to the public through the use of social media channels such as Facebook and so on. In terms of CSR selection, the majority of the respondents, or 78%, indicated customers as their intended beneficiaries of CSR programs. It also reveals in this part that companies perform several selection processes before the intended beneficiaries are selected. The majority of the respondents, or 68%, set minimum criteria and requirements in the selection process. With regards to CSR implementation, it shows how the companies implement their CSR programs. Based on the data gathered, the majority of the respondents, or 97%, clearly define the instructions, instruments, and approaches to be used in the implementation of CSR programs. And lastly, in terms of CSR monitoring, the majority of the respondents, or 61%, have an evaluation of the expected and actual outcomes of the CSR programs. For the financial aspects, next slide please. Based on the results, the majority of the respondents, or 93%, have their separate budget for CSR programs in their company, with 68% making separate financial statements for it. And according to the majority of the respondents, these financial statements are commonly prepared and reported annually by a specifically designated department. So to continue, may I call on Ms. Shawson, please?
For part 6, problems encountered and proposed solution, to summarize, the major dilemma that they have experienced in implementing CSR is that it is costly, garnering 81% of the total responses. Next is CSR is too complex and difficult to measure, and the least is the need for serious management or leadership skills, acquiring 66%. So for the proposed solutions, the results are almost identical to the problems encountered. The best solution is to reduce operational costs or increase the company funds by forming strategic partnership, obtaining 90% of the responses. So second is to carry out an effective and appropriate research and strategic plan, 82%. And last, to increase CSR awareness, engagement, and training, which is 70. So next slide. For the benefits, the first three benefits correspond to the economic component. The highest rating that the respondents gave is 54%. So this is above the majority, which means that they strongly agree that CSR helped their company in reducing its cost, expenses, and taxes. Other benefits also achieve a high rating. 51 strongly agreed that CSR programs contributed to their company's financial monitoring and management, or simply the road to financial success, since 44 also strongly agreed that their company gained more investment opportunities and competitive advantage. Next slide. These benefits pertain to the legal component. So the highest rate that the majority gave is 55 under the fifth benefit. So they strongly agreed that CSR assisted them to strengthen their bond with government regulators and gain protection and support. So in addition, the CSR programs also help their company avoid legal violations and encourage the management, including their employees, to be more disciplined based on the 51 and 46%. Next slide. For benefits 7 to 9 belonging to the ethical components, so we can see here that the majority 55 and 54 out of 100 from number 7 and 9 both strongly agreed that CSR programs reduce wastage or any harmful effects to the environment and help in maintaining the standards of ethical norms. So 45 also strongly agreed that their employees become more motivated and perform better in the workplace. Next slide. For the last three benefits, representing the discretionary component, there's a slightly larger gap between the strongly agreed responses, and for them, the top benefit is that CSR programs enhance consumer brand awareness and strengthening the company's image and reputation to the public, indicated by 57 responses. So next in line is that it improved their ability to establish an effective and efficient relationship with their business partner. So it obtained a positive result, which is 48%. And lastly, many of them also strongly agreed that CSR contributed to improving their quality of life and strengthened their relationship with the community, represented by the 45 respondents. Next slide. So for the part 8, this just means a positive response for the overall performance, as you can see with the 55 strongly agree and 30% agree responses. Next slide. So we used Pearson correlation to determine whether there is a significant relationship between CSR and performance. So we first plotted the X values represented by the CSR programs and Y, which are the benefits of CSR. So next we computed for the summation of the X and Y values and also the mean. After that, we computed the first part of the R formula, or the numerator, which is the summation of the multiplied x and y values less the mean of x and y squared, equal to 348.81. Then we computed for the denominator, square root of the summation of x values less mean squared, equal to 432,596, multiplied by the summation of the y value squared, equal to 295,756. And that's how we got the R, which is 0.9731. Since the R value is near to positive 1, it indicates that they have a strong positive correlation. So next slide. For us to determine whether to accept or reject the null hypothesis, we will look into the critical values for Pearson. So we use two-tailed test, point and level of significance with 4 degrees of freedom. So this 4K from the formula N represented by number of pairs of values less the constant 2. Since our computed R is 0.973, which is greater than the tabular value of 0.729, we therefore reject the null, which means that there is a significant relationship between CSR and performance of SMEs. So this denotes that as the X variable increases, the Y variable also increases. So to simplify, the higher the rate of the CSR programs, the higher the number of benefits it provides that could lead to better performance of SMEs. So for Chapter 5, Ms. Morente.
Okay, next slide. So for the summary of the findings, the result shows that economic ranked first or the most priority among the four components of CSR. Next, the finding shows that majority of the respondents rate their CSR programs under the four components as 5 being the best, except for the discretionary which gathered the most rates for 4 and 5. The study also revealed that the majority of the respondents encountered problems in having CSR programs such as lack of management and leadership skills, costly to implement, too complex, and difficult to measure. Next slide. The result also shows a positive response in terms of the benefits of the CSR. And among the benefits provided, the highest percentage, which is 57% of the respondents, strongly agree that having CSR programs enhance brand awareness while strengthening the company's image and reputation. And lastly, majority of 55% of the respondents strongly agree that CSR programs improve the company's overall performance. Next slide. Okay, for the conclusion, to answer the first statement of the problem, for economic, which ranked first among the CSR components, majority of the respondents rated the three CSR programs provided as 5 or best. This concludes that majority of the respondents prioritize and perform best in annual financial reporting, considering the cost-benefit principle and performing strategic management enhancement programs. For the legal, which turned out to be the second among the components of CSR, the same with economic, majority of the respondents rated the three CSR programs provided as 5 or best. This concludes that majority of the respondents do their best in adherence to labor laws, product and service quality and price, in compliance with government regulations like paying taxes, as well as strict implementation of business rules and regulations within the firm. Next slide. Based on the findings, ethical ranked third among the four components of CSR, and the three programs provided were rated by the majority of the respondents as 5 or best. This concludes that majority of the sampled SMEs obediently practice environmental management, are concerned about their employees' health, safety, and working conditions, and best follow the code of ethics in their workplace. And lastly, the discretionary ranks fourth or the least important of the four components of CSR. The result shows that majority of the respondents rated the three CSR programs provided as either 5 or 4, still indicating a positive response in terms of willful public donations to charities, recognition, and support for volunteer work by employees, which involves community service and development programs, and fundraising campaigns and sponsorship programs related to health, educational, financial, and livelihood for a cause or target beneficiary. So, as the result shows, companies nowadays engage in CSR efforts to promote both their businesses and the people they serve, which, according to Flores of 2018, could lead to support and cooperation from the public for their business activities. So, to continue, here is Ms. Valdez.
So to answer the second SOP, almost the majority of the sampled SMEs in Metro Manila strongly agree that they benefit from the implementation of CSR programs. These benefits were previously discussed, and they include financial, non-financial, as well as environmental and social welfare benefits. Among these, 57% strongly agreed that having CSR programs enhance brand awareness while strengthening the company's image and reputation. Next slide. Lastly, to answer the last SOP, there is a significant relationship between CSR and the performance of selected SMEs in Metro Manila, Philippines, and it shows a strong positive correlation. Next slide. So for recommendation, it is recommended for future researchers to take a more in-depth look at the context of the upcoming study by expanding their scope to include large enterprises in cities outside of Metro Manila. The researchers recommend that every business organization should implement CSR programs since it not only benefits society but also helps your business operate better. Additionally, the researchers recommend employees to support their company's CSR programs since they became more motivated and perform better during the business operations. And because SMEs benefited from CSR programs, researchers recommend the general public to support businesses that engage in such activities as they are one of the program's beneficiary. Lastly, considering CSR is less prevalent among SMEs, the researchers recommend that the government raise awareness of CSR programs and implement it in businesses of all sizes. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. So the floor is now open for question and answer.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I would like to commend your study. It's a very interesting study. Uh, I would also like to introduce myself. I'm Jeric James Pernites. I graduated in UE as a Mega World Scholar. So I'm a product of a CSR program. And not only that, after graduating, I was also involved in Mega World Foundation while I am being an employee of Mega World Corporation. And I finished my finance Masters of Science in Finance earlier this year, but the first semester of the program, I made a paper about publicly listed companies and CSR programs. Sadly, the results are very inconclusive. So there's no strong proof that the stock price is directly affected or at least remotely affected by CSR programs or corporate social responsibility arms such as foundations or sponsored organizations. Again, I would like to commend your paper. It's a good paper. It's well thought of. First of all, I would like to suggest it would be very beneficial to strengthen your case if you can find not only the number of SMEs, but also its contribution to the actual GDP of the country. So it's a very good way to strengthen the point of SMEs being the backbone of the economy, right? Next, in page 11 of your paper, you have mentioned, and I think Rafael mentioned infrastructures. SMEs usually are engaged in fragmented industries. So when you say they're fragmented industries, you can't expand indefinitely. So unlike, for example, real estate or manufacturing processes or like Unilever, Monde, or Nestle, right? So you can always expand. You need infrastructures to expand. You need roads. You need the transportation to be able to transport your products. But SMEs, they are usually involved in fragmented or highly fragmented industries. When you say they're highly fragmented, no amount of expansion can make you consolidate the market. So ibig sabihin, simply put, infrastructures will not help in SMEs. In general, SMEs are not directly affected by infrastructure. It's mostly the consumers that benefit on infrastructure kasi SMEs are engaged in fragmented industries. So you might want to look into that. Uh, in page 11 again, you mentioned that businesses engaged in international trade are more resilient than those with local captive markets. Can you please clarify that statement? Kasi I feel like the pandemic actually hit harder on those involved in international trade. Page 11 of your paper. Second paragraph. Businesses that were more competitive before the crisis tend to be more resilient, engaged in international trade, right? Anyone? I think nakamute ata si Rafael. Nagsasalita ka ba? Or
Well, this part of the literature mentions after that statement po, the literature states that the study suggests that boosting small businesses competitiveness can help them withstand the pandemic. So the prior statement referring to the international trade mainly refers to the competitiveness of these companies prior to the crisis, which was the pandemic. So their competitiveness in the industry aided them helped them to become more resilient. And now that there is a pandemic, that of course consequently greatly affects the industry of the companies here in the Philippines.
okay. Um, Next
And
suggestion.
can I answer?
Yeah, sure, sure.
I guess businesses who engage in international trade transactions have more experiences po in different industries, and from that po they experience a lot of challenges and problems. They tend to be resilient, and they when they were able to get through of that challenge, I think that increases their competitive advantages over the new businesses that are rising right now po, and they can um, easily have advantages to overcome like this kind of pandemic po,
Mhm.
compared to the businesses that are just operating few years ago lang po na nagsimula ganun po. I guess that's the reason.
Okay. Good. Um, your page 31 is actually just a reiteration. It's very repetitive and redundant. I suggest you shorten this part kasi medyo paulit-ulit na lang siya. Nabanggit na yung lack of technical know-how, nabanggit na yung SMEs as the majority, comprising the majority of businesses worldwide. So medyo paulit-ulit siya, medyo redundant siya for the reader. So tendency when you have portions like that, you tend to lose the reader on the next portions, which would probably contain the more relevant information. Um, Page 32, I would also like to suggest sa page 32 nabanggit nyo yung shareholder theory, agency theory, and such. I would also like to suggest you try on checking stakeholder capitalism. That's actually the concept that is hot right now, that is about CSR as well. So, World Economic Forum released a book about it, stakeholder capitalism. So, maganda siyang maging reference. It involves from the evolution of the early stages of capitalism after the World War, the Second World War, and then the evolution of the Chinese economy. Makikita nyo doon kung paano siya nag-evolve from very highly manufacturing and doesn't care about the emissions. It evolved into a more automated and trying to be as efficient as possible with their emissions. So maganda siyang reference. You can check Stakeholder Capitalism by World Economic Forum. Page 35, yung first paragraph niya is same with page 31. Not same words but same content, so repetitive again. You might want to shorten that, you might want to review that. Just a suggestion. Uh, I have a question on your data. First of all, the study is very interesting. I like the study because I've tried this with listed companies in the US. Ngayon, ang problem is you can't just base on a survey when you're trying to look at the relevance, I mean of the CSR and the performance of a company. So what I could suggest you, but I'm not sure if you can ano pa add pa, maybe too late na, but you can add as a recommendation to future researchers, is to provide in your survey a question relating to the company size, relating to maybe an estimate or a range of their size, of their revenue levels, of their gross profit margins. That way you can see, and then maybe a size before and after, like size from prior year. So since we're talking about SMEs, 3 million to 15 million ang assets nila, most likely meron na yung fina-file na FS. Kahit na hindi sila publicly listed, they have an FS. They regularly file their financial statements, which you can use as a basis. They might not be that willing to provide you their financial statements, but at least you can ask them of the range of their assets, the range of their revenues. That way, we can check if they're really growing faster than those without CSR programs, right? So doon natin mas makikita if the CSR programs or the maintenance of CSR programs are actually helping, 'di ba? We can see if the profit margins of a company, of an SME na walang CSR program is lower. Obviously, they're gonna cost them more. The CSR program are gonna cost them more. But at the same time, if they earn more from, say, brand recognition, diba, brand equity, that those are things that you can measure. Since these are not publicly listed companies, it's gonna be hard to ask for data. But what I really suggest in the future, hopefully in the future, is asking for a range. You don't have to ask the specific ano kita, pero that's the way you can really measure the performance, kasi the title of your study is about the performance of SMEs, di ba? So you can't just base on surveys, kasi they might say na they do this CSR, maybe they do, but are they really earning from it? Baka nga in the future they're cost cutting na dahil hindi pala effective, 'di ba? And again, based on my experience na public listed companies, it's very inconclusive kasi they have, let's say for example, Mega World Foundation, Ayala Foundation, Aboitiz Foundation, so they have their own financial statements, although it's very hard to get them, but when you have contacts sa BSE, pero kahit hindi nyo na yun gawin, pero it's very inconclusive even if you look at the financial statements of the parent company and the foundation. So, yun yung doubt ko sa survey results, no? Hindi natin ma-measure yung growth talaga ng companies. Next, I have a problem with the way you present the data. So for example, wait, I'm looking for one of the surveys. I think yung about sa website yun eh. Let me just look for it up. So ayan, figure 4.9. Yeah, figure 4.9. Medyo linawin nyo siguro yung kung paano pine-present yung ano. Maybe for the sake of the other panelists, you can present figure 4.9 sa ano nyo, paper nyo, para makita rin nila what I'm trying to pinpoint. Kasi in your narrative, you say na out of 100 respondents, 77 disseminated through social media channels, while 74 used their websites. Right away in that statement pa lang, that's 151 na agad out of 100 respondents. So medyo vague lang yung statement. Parang I get it naman na in the survey may nagko-coincide. Merong both, merong ano. So when you look into the graph kasi, parang very hindi siya out of 100, 'di ba? So maganda na mai-present nyo siya in a clearer statement. Tapos siguro I don't know if you still have the time, suggested lang naman, there are graphs in Excel which you can use na makikita nyo yung nagko-coincide na votes. So you can use that as well. If you have the time, of course, and if you want to improve your paper, di ba? Para hindi, kasi parang ang gulo eh. For example, sabihin na out of 100, X chose this while Y chose this. Tapos yung total ng X plus Y is more than 100. So medyo confusing yun, and Yun nga, para mas malinaw kay reader. Ah, um, figure 4.12, pakilinaw din yung y-axis niya. So if you go sa figure 4.12, yung labeling ng axis, does the company, does the does the lang. So I was trying to understand din kasi the graphs kasi again, I'm very interested in your study. So lucky for you, I'm interested. Kaya ayan, nahimay ko tuloy. Pero yun, yung y-axis, hindi ko magets ano yung legends niya. Does the. So, paki-ayos na lang din for the sake of the future readers din, di ba? Yung figure 4.20 and 4.21, my question there is, if CSR is costly, how do we say that we improve the profitability of the firm? This is not something that you can answer obviously kasi nga wala tayong data, pero yun, medyo mahirap i-support yung graph, yung statement dahil nga kumbaga madali kasing sabihin na this company is earning this much, 'di ba? Pero yun lang, medyo hindi siya convincing for the reader without the figures. What else? Ayun, again, reminder lang sa note ko lang, no, since na-mention nyo that the study involves quantitative analysis, pero it's really hard when your quantitative analysis is only based on the metrics of the survey instead of actual figures of a company. It's very hard to prove that the financial performance is directly benefited by the CSR programs. But I do understand naman how hard it is. Kaya nga, publicly listed companies lang din yung nagawa ko nun at the time. Pero that's a weakness that you can add as a recommendation din, di ba? Yung okay. Again, since there's no financial measure, it's really hard for me personally that the methodology can convince me as a reader to reject the null hypothesis kasi it's very yun nga, the survey alone cannot prove that the financial performance has been improved by the CSR, or can the improvement, if there's an improvement in the financial performance, it's not directly attributable to CSR. You can't prove that it directly is attributed to the CSR. Lastly, yung second and third problem statements, due to the lack of data, it should not be opinion based. No, I can see in your presentation how you were able to answer that based on the surveys, and I appreciate your effort on crunching the numbers. But again, that would be the bigger problem in your paper. As to how you can solve it, I don't think you can solve it with the given time to revise, but you can definitely add that as a recommendation for future researchers. Sir, ma'am, that would be all from my end.
Ayun, so thank you very much. Luckily, nandito si Sir. So, ang dami niya na natanong. So, konti na lang yung itatanong ko. I'm not sure kung naitanong na to ni Sir, no? So, medyo confusing lang yung title. So, the corporate social responsibility in the performance. So, you're trying to determine kung ilang percentage doon sa performance yung effect ng CSR. Pero parang nabanggit ni Sir na hindi natin ma-associate, no? So, maybe, tama ba? Yun ba yung gusto nyo malaman? Yung halimbawa, 20% is from the CSR, yung 20% increase, halimbawa? Or gusto nyo lang malaman kung merong effect yung CSR dun sa financial performance? Kasi yung pagkakasabi nyo dun sa title, the corporate social responsibility in the performance of selected. So, kung hindi naman ganun, so feeling ko tama na yung nilagay nyo dun sa objective, which is the relationship of CSR and the performance of selected. Kasi parang gusto nyo malaman, halimbawa nag-increase yung, for me ganun yung interpretation ko. So kung nag-increase yung profit or net income for example or sales for example ng 20%, ilan doon yung effect ng corporate social responsibility. So parang ganun kasi yung dating ng title. So yun lang. So baka naman kasi hindi ganun. Baka gusto niyo lang malaman kung yung firm ba, pag merong CSR, nag improve ba yung financial performance. So uh, tapos, it's good na doon sa statistics nyo, you use correlation. So, that's correct. So, that's very nice of you. Conceptual framework, medyo old style. Hindi na ginagamit yung input, process, output. Actually, comment ko din sa dati. So, siguro applicable pa, but for the publication per se, hindi na siya ginagamit yung process. No? So, pwede na diretso na lang. So, huwag mo na ilagay na input. So, yung factors na lang o yung variables na lang na ini-study mo. Tapos, yung expected output mo lang. Huwag mo na ilagay na input, tapos ito yung output. Kasi, papakita mo naman doon sa arrow, di ba? Sa arrow. If output ba yun? So, kung relationship, two-headed yung arrow, pero kung effect siya, one lang yung head nung arrow. Gusto ko din yung nilagay nyo sa theory, actually. So, kung napansin nyo, di ako masyado pinupuri ko nga kayo. So, yung triple bottom approach, bottom line approach, this is correct also. So, kasi ginagamit ko, tinuturo ko yan sa project management. Binabanggit ko siya. So, natuwa ako doon. Yung recommendation is also good. Yun nga lang, actually, nabanggit ko yan kasi yung iba, hindi ko masyadong nagustuhan yung pagkaka-construct nila ng recommendation. Pero sa inyo, medyo maayos siya. Medyo sumobra lang ng konti. Dapat i-pattern nyo mismo. Same na same kung paano nyo sinabi yung sa significance of the study. Ibig sabihin, sinabi nyo kasi na financial reporting ba to? FR, nilagay ko lang kasi. Tapos yung Metro Manila. So, dapat ganun din nyo siya ginawa pagdating sa recommendation. Although yung tatlo parang tama, medyo nahimay lang, parang na-divide yata yung Metro Manila something dun sa significance of the study. Last question from me. So, ito practical question lang. So, as an ordinary consumer, what is your reflection after your paper, after the results of, or after you conducted a research about CSR? So, meron ba, tingin nyo ba naka-influence yun sa inyo?
Well, ayun po. Well, now kasi po, since during these times po, most companies revert to the sustainable way of manufacturing and promoting their products. As for cosmetics, they stop testing on animals. Supermarkets, SM, Robinsons omitted from using plastic for their packaging. So these kinds of a daily na what you can observe from these companies is what we expect from these
Nawala po siya. Wait lang.
Okay. Nisip ko kung ako yung nawala. O baka merong ibang gusto sumagot. Practical question lang yun. Ba't ko yung natanong?
Ay, sorry
Kasi the objective of research kasi is the so ultimate is the practical application. So I wish the future thesis project of all the students will be discussed inside the class. Diba? So dapat meron tayong reflection after.
Hello po. Apologies po. Nakat ako. Nag-hang yung laptop. So, can I continue po yung sinasabi ko kanina?
Yes, please.
Hi, thank you so much po. So, as I was saying, we have observed, of course, daily initiatives from companies. What I said, from supermarkets to the cosmetics. So, we expect, of course, from the study na, that apart from these corporations, big corporations, the SME, small, medium enterprises would also include these initiatives, these CSR programs in their operations, in their business operations, because of course, the better the CSR programs that they were to implement based study and the literature that we had, the more customers would be more interested. There will be a wider scope of the customers, of course, it would be appealing and would promote good image on behalf of the company po. As for the other proponents po, they have other answers as well.
Um, um, with that question po, sir, so personally po as a consumer, so since we are the end user naman ng mga programs na to, I could say na super laki ng impact niya or effect niya um, sa mga tao. Like, kapag environmentally friendly yung mga projects nila, dun po nakikita na super laki nung effect niya, hindi lang sa current generation, kundi para sa future generation din. And also, these SMEs na may CSR programs, they could, ma-expect po natin na they can be a component ng sustainable development po.
So for me din po, this CSR topic din po is very interesting kasi po very timely po siya and ito po yung future because this demonstrates that businesses take interest not in wider social issues lang po, not just profitability and as future accountants din po kung business managers and such kung entrepreneurs, we will play a crucial role din po someday, not just as consumers. So we all know naman po na in the Philippines, this is a developing country. So through CSR, through proper implementation of CSR, we can soon be a developed country na po. And I commend din po yung mga projects po. Nakakakita ko lang po kakapost na po ng McDonald's na they have two green ano na po parang eco-friendly shops or branches sa Manila. And I was ano po talaga amazed kasi they could reduce cost and also attract more customers. Kunwari po yung sa mga raindrops, meron po silang filter doon to create water and nag-use na rin po sila ng mga solar panel po. Yun po, thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. I will transfer the floor to Ma'am Mendoza. Okay.
Good afternoon na. Good afternoon, everybody. How are you
Good
guys?
afternoon po.
Good afternoon.
Good, everybody.
Long
Good.
time no talk now.
Ako lang to. O kayong just me, ha? Ako lang to. Okay, actually, dalawa lang naman tong clarificatory question lang. Kasi kanina pa tinatanong ni Sir Richmond. I would like to throw the question to you. Ano bang definition yun ng performance dun sa title? Yun lang, para ma-clarify.
Ano po ma'am, yung pinaka-performance po kasi diyan, yung una po namin kasi pong balak po talaga na study is financial. Since due to the limitations brought by the pandemic po, parang ang hirap pong po ng mga financial statement, yung mga ganun po. So, we revise po talaga siya as an overall na po in general po. Pati po yung hindi lang po pang financial, but also in different components din po such as yun po mga ethical sa loob din po ng mga organization, not just po financial, as an overall na po siya.
Okay. Well, you see, by the term performance, you cannot really detach financial from performance because when you hear the word performance itself, the first thing that will come into one's mind will be the financial. All right. And then let me just share this, If you go to the Securities and Exchange Commission, pwede kayong kumuha doon eh. Kaya lang syempre may bayad. Pero you can request for copies of yun lang for listed companies. Kaya lang kasi hindi ba yung population ninyo ay mga SMEs. So I don't know if you can, yun nga lang, mahal ang bayad, Sir Jeric. But you can acquire copies of financial statement from SECs. Alright, so that will clarify that, the definition of performance. And then another item, dalawa lang naman to. The second one is some sort of a parang conflict. Kasi doon sa problems encountered ng companies with regards to the implementation of the CSR, you will find this in page 56 up to 57. Ang sabi doon, mostly ng kanilang mga problem ay cost. costly yung program. So it will require significant amount. 81% says it is costly and some says it is complex. Pagkatapos doon sa page 74 naman, nung makita ko yung profile ng company, I hope you don't mind kasi binasa ko talaga tong ano nyo. Sa page 74, I saw na these companies na sumagot doon sa mga questionnaires ninyo, meron silang sarili nilang CSR. So how come? Kasi if their problem on the implementation will be funding, but the fact na meron silang separate na CSR, so in other words, meron silang inaalat na budget for that. Yun. So yun lang. That is another, I believe, na conflict. And then for the recommendation, I don't know if you've heard, but this is really something, I will borrow the term of Jeric. This is really something hot, not only in the Philippines, but also abroad. You've heard of the ESG sustainability, right? Narinig nyo na ba yon? By ESG, it is economic and environmental. S stands for social, and G is governance. Because one of your problems presented in here is support from management. That's why itong ESG sustainability is some sort of a broader concept than the CSR that is now being done by publicly listed companies. So maybe you can include in the literature, ito lang, you can download a lot from accounting firms, from government agencies about itong ESG sustainability. Kasi yung CSR, part lang nito yung S, social responsibility. So meron siyang maraming binanggit dito, yung governance, the governance will be a solution to the concern of your CSR. Okay, yung mga problem na nabanggit diyan. So yun lang naman. So probably you can include that as part of your literature. All right, and so I would like to congratulate everybody. Yun lang ang aking improvement, yun lang ang aking tanong. Well done. Very good, everybody. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Sir.
Congrats.
Baka niyo yung mga sarili niyo.
Thank you po.
Ayun. So, thank you.
Okay. So, congratulations everyone. Probably we may request the group to please leave the room kasi meron lang kaming mga discussions pa ng members ng panel. Bye-bye everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you
Okay.
po.
Thank you po.
Welcome. Bye.
Congrats.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Ayun. So, ayun.
Yun.
Ayun po. Hello
So,
po.
bali, ang gagawin natin dito pala, nabasa ko dun sa guideline, merong individual grades at saka may group grade.
Yes
Nakita
po.
niyo yun? Oh, so,
Yes po.
yun lang. Medyo
So,
maayos
bali-
ng class group, di ba?
Compare po doon sa ano. Ma'am, bali ang gagawin ko is i-share ko sa inyo yung video kasi nare-record ko naman. So, para at least pwede nyo siyang balikan.
Yes, oo.
Ayun po.
Oo,
Thank you.
para mapag-usap, bakit ba nakasarado yung aking ano?
Tingin ko po ako. Iya ako open ang camera.
So, we'll just wait for the recording, Richmond, para somehow, kasi unfair naman dun sa mga, nakita naman natin kung sino yung mga nag-perform in the presentation. Nice to meet you, Jeric.
Thank you po, ma'am. Nice to meet you rin po.
Anong year ka ba sa UE?
2014 po ako gumraduate.
2014. Okay. Very young ka pa pala.
May accounting technology pa po na.
Ngayon yata meron pa para konti na lang yata.
MA na
Konti
lang
na
ata
lang.
ngayon, sir.
Konti na lang eh. Oo.
Parang
Kumbaga yung mga remaining na lang po.
Would you like to join the academe?
Different na chance siguro, ma'am. Pwede naman po.
O, di apply ka na. Gumawa ka lang ng maayos na curriculum vitae. Tapos
Pag po
submit mo
may
kay Dean. Barkada
Hindi
naman
na
ni
open.
Richmond si Tin eh. So, no problem.
Ako, actually, nung nasa New York po ako nung 2019, gusto akong puntahan ni Ma'am Dalisay.
Aha.
Kasi sa may Manhattan po siya, sa may Queens ako. Kaso hindi po kami natuloy magkita ron, sayang nga eh.
Ganun ba?
Opo.
Dapat tinuloy mo.
Dapat i-meet ko siya eh. Kaso the following day, punta na siyang Baltimore eh.
Mm.